Hello, everybody. Welcome to DJ Talks. I don't remember what episode this is, but I think it's like 7 or 8 or something,
Something like that.
something like that. My name is Johnny,
My name's Dan. What's up?
and previously for the last like 2 episodes, they were pre-recorded before I left the country. I went to Tokyo for vacation
You
for
got
about two
shipped out there,
weeks.
you know, it was crazy, crazy life.
Yeah, yeah. It was pretty fun. Did a lot of really cool stuff. Got to eat a lot of really good food, and more importantly, I actually got to meet people for the first time and reconnect with people uh, in Japan. I've been there once before. The first time was on a YOLO spring break vacation. I got like round trip direct flights from America for $400, and I was like, "There's no way I don't go."
Mhm.
But that was more of like a YOLO getaway, just do whatever I want sort of thing. This time, I got to sit down, talk to people. I got to do things that I really enjoyed, very specific to my interests. And so Dan and I are going to spend a good amount of this episode talking about some of the more controversial topics and things that people may not necessarily know about Japan or may have misconceptions on, like the work culture, like people's personal lives and how they go about living them, and
Mhm.
just other things that uh, other
Like,
things that people may not know about. Just
yeah,
shining a light on those areas.
just a little bit about the culture because we obviously are pretty curious and we love, at least me. I don't know about you, going twice already, you know. No, at least me. I think both of us really enjoy a lot of the Japanese culture or at least the things they've brought to the U.S. So, um, out of curiosity, we're gonna dive a little bit into it. So, um, question for you, Johnny. Then, how did this time come about?
Okay. So you're asking like why I decided to go at all,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Why a second time, or why this time? Why that long? 2 weeks? You know, all of that.
Yeah. So this was decided during the academic semester. For those of you who don't know, I just graduated from University of Illinois in May. And this semester particularly was very difficult for me. I was taking a bunch of my high level courses. It was very stressful, and I was putting in easily like 40 or 50 hours a week between classes and work just to make sure I got everything done. It was quite exhausting. So I I was just on Discord, just chatting with my friends, and I was like, "Man, this sucks. This is really stressful. This feels really bad." And then my buddy Kyle, and I mean we're gonna refer to him a lot. Him and another friend of mine, Ryan. So Kyle is a friend of mine who I've met 11 years ago, and we we've been talking a lot about being able to go on a vacation together. He studied Japanese language for about 10 years, and he's in love with Japanese culture. He's not a weeb at all, in the sense that like, oh, he studied Japanese so he could like learn and understand anime and shit. He's not that kind of guy. I mean, he watches dramas, he's watched a little bit of anime, but like he's not even close to like the kind of nerd that I am.
Hmm.
And I'm not even that big of a weeb either. A lot of people just think I am because I'm very much into the things that I like, but like on average, like with a lot of my peers, I've watched way less anime than most of them, and they'll attest to that. It's just fun making fun of me for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, so I was talking to my buddy Kyle and Ryan. Now Ryan is a really good friend of mine. I've known him for like 8 years, and he also studied Japanese a little bit. He went with me to Japan the first time,
Hmm.
and he's like most of you guys and who would go to Japan literally just to eat. I know a lot of my friends would love to do that. They would just go. They don't necessarily want to like. They don't care about like seeing specific things. They don't want to necessarily like do anything but eat food, and then everything else can be like the cherries on top, right?
Food.
Um,
Oh, that's the best part of the travel right there.
yeah. No, actually though, I'm so excited to talk about the food that I ate. But yeah. So there were a lot of opportunities for me to talk to them about going to Japan again, and Kyle worked out this thing where he was gonna go at the same time his girlfriend was going, so he could spend some time with her, meet her with her parents and stuff. And he actually got to go out to the countryside and like visit her grandparents. It was really cool. But then Ryan was like, "Hey, I want to go too," and I was like, "Hey, that'd be pretty dope." But I don't really like. I don't know if I can make this happen. So then they eventually said that this would be like a really good post graduation type of thing, and that they really wanted me to go with. And it was a really good opportunity for me to go with Kyle because it's just something that we wanted to do for a very long time.
Right.
And since he's like a really good friend of mine, it'd be really nice to see that side of his life because I have never seen that side of his life before where he's like fluent in Japanese. Everyone that I met with talked about how well Kyle spoke Japanese, how his Japanese was probably better than most of the people that we worked with and met with, and that like his pronunciation was godlike, his reading and comprehension was really good.
Yeah.
And that was just like a side of him, part of his identity that I didn't see yet. And then Ryan was just like, yeah, if you don't go, I'm probably not gonna go, but you should really come because it'll be fun as hell. And I was like,
All right, so it's more. All
all
right,
right, I guess I'm going.
it was like it's like a like a graduation vacation,
Yeah,
right?
that's basically what it was. Yeah,
After going through 4 or 5 years of whatever crap, gotta go out, enjoy 2 weeks of Japan. That's really cool. Where did you guys end up staying?
not a hotel, which I was really thankful for. I was really lucky, because a mutual friend of ours, not you and me, Dan, but I mean between
Right.
Kyle and Ryan and I, at high school, it has a really good family friend in Tokyo who ended up being the family that hosted us. So we had a homestay the entire time we were there.
Okay. Oh, so you guys had friends before they moved back to Japan, or they had family in Japan?
No, it was a family friend of our friend from high school.
Okay. Oh, okay. A family friend. Okay,
Yeah.
so how did that even come about? Like that far of a jump? Family friend of a friend from high
Yeah.
school.
So Kyle goes to Japan, I think, every summer.
Okay.
And so he's just like built up those connections, and he was like,
That's
he's
really
built up
cool.
really good relationships with them. So it's one of those things where like they want him to stay
Mhm.
with them whenever he comes back, and they had room for me and Ryan. So it
That's
was
cool. That's cool. All right. So a question for you then there. Finding these types of situations, I've heard a lot of things, at least the more secret stuff in Japan, or even certain connections. You have to know Japanese in order to get into certain areas, or into certain locations, or into certain places or venues, or you have to know somebody who knows Japan. Did you experience a little bit of that from the first time you went, obviously, to the second time you went? Because the second time you went with someone who spoke fluent Japan or Japanese. Sorry. Holy crap! Yeah,
yes, he spoke fluent Japan.
just Japan, fluent Japanese, right? So from
Yeah.
the first time, you guys had nobody who spoke Japanese versus the second time you had someone fully fluent. How did that change your experience a little bit? Obviously, you did different things, but did you notice anything different?
So both times Ryan came with me, and then Jasper, my friend Jasper, also came.
Right?
And they both have like pretty elementary levels of Japanese comprehension. Ryan can speak a little bit. Jasper can read a little bit. Jasper also has a pretty good understanding of Chinese. And for those of you that don't know, Japanese language has 3 forms of writing. Hiragana, which is kind of like the alphabet. Katakana, which is their alphabet specifically for words borrowed from different languages. And kanji, which is literally just Chinese characters. So because Jasper has a pretty good grasp on Chinese language, and Ryan could speak a little bit, that helped us get around the first time. But this time it was very different because I studied a little bit of Japanese before the trip. So that didn't necessarily make it so my trip was, I guess it made travel and having conversations with people a little bit easier. But then to answer your question specifically about were there things that I noticed that were different because I had a fluent Japanese speaker with me, I would say so. I think that there are a lot of opportunities to have more in-depth conversations with people, because there was someone there to help bridge that gap. So about like half of my trips dinners, I would say, were with friends of ours. So my high school had a sister high school in Japan.
Ooh.
And there's a program where they come visit us for like a week or two, and then we go send students there for a week or two or something. I don't know the details, but it's something along those lines where we get to visit each other. And so I didn't study Japanese in high school, but I was friends with a lot of people that studied Japanese in high school, and I got to meet some of those people. So Kyle had maintained relationships with them because he's so good at Japanese that he was able to like build those relationships and get to know them. And it became a regular thing for him to reconnect with them whenever he went back. There's this really cute picture that they showed me when I was at dinner with them once, of them all sending off Kyle. A couple of them are crying. Like, they're really close. So this is leading into the different perspectives that you kind of asked me about. When we would have dinner with these people, when we would like go out to, get drinks or whatever, they would be talking to Kyle about things that were specific to their lives, or that they wanted to share from their experiences. But then their English level is very elementary, and my Japanese is like very, very basic. It's just barely enough to like get by. So but the reason why that's significant is because I was able to use that like minor, it's like a very small bridge. It's almost like a straw of like space where I could communicate with them and ask them more specific questions. And then Kyle, being the fluent speaker, was able to bridge that gap. So when I asked about people's personal lives, when I asked about their work schedules, when I asked about what their goals were in life and things like that, they were able to tell me. But then when there were more complex thoughts that they couldn't necessarily share, they would like kind of say it in Japanese, and then Kyle would translate it in such a way that the speaker originally felt was appropriate. Kyle was really good at that because he knows me and Ryan very well, and then he knows these people very well. So then he, because maybe he would say something in English that would translate something that someone else was saying, they would understand the English and would to know that Kyle translated it accurately, even though they wouldn't necessarily be able to regurgitate that. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So now these people, friends of Kyle's, they live in Japan. They grew up in Japan. They're born in Japan.
For the most part, yeah. I mean, some of them are pretty have pretty diverse backgrounds. I know there's one girl who was like in the UK for a while, in Egypt for a while. Her English is like, she has no Japanese accent on her English. It is actually insane. She's like super talented and really smart. Shout out to Haru if you're watching this. But yeah, I was just like she's got an insanely cool background. But yeah, for the most part, I think most of them were born and raised in Japan.
Okay.
And I've spent some amount of time in the United States. Most of them.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. I'm going to go back a little bit into the host family experience and kind of stay, because I'm curious about that. Now, is this somewhat or even somewhat normal, or do people do some type of host family in Japan specifically frequently, or is this some kind of very special situation, or have you heard of anything like that?
I'm actually really glad you brought that up, because that's really interesting. Towards the end of my trip, I got dinner with my host family, and I asked them very straight up. Okay, so let me preface this with the story of how I got to their place. So I got to Japan, but me, Kyle, and Ryan and Jasper all got to Japan in different days and different times. None of us had the same flight. Jasper was flying from the Philippines. Ryan had a work schedule to abide to and was leaving from Chicago. I left early from Chicago, and Kyle was leaving from Boston. Okay. So we're all coming from different places at different times. Jasper also didn't stay with us at the homestay because there wasn't enough space, so he got an Airbnb, but met with us like throughout the trip. So, so what actually happened was, I just had an address and a name. Okay. And I just went to their house and I was like, "Hi, I'm Kyle's friend. please take me in. That's actually kind of what happened.
How did? Okay, so you just had an address and a name. How did?
Yeah.
How did that? How do you even get there? You just took like a
So
taxi?
no, no. The train system
Okay.
is there's a lot that when you look at the map, you're like, holy shit! Like this is way too much to comprehend.
It's not just
But
red
it's very
line, blue
straightforward.
line, not just one
I mean, they
line.
do color code stuff, but it's not as straightforward as Chicago. I actually think like Chicago's train system is extremely simple, compared to a lot of the train systems that I've experienced,
Right.
and transit systems. But yeah, I took a train to their place, and then I walked up to them. And what's scary is that, I mean, not scary. It's just very intimidating. They're where they live is connected to and right next not connected it's right next to an embassy. I don't remember if it was the US embassy or the British embassy or something, but it's right next to a foreign embassy.
Mm-hmm.
So that area was gated off, and there was a police officer standing there like guarding it.
Okay.
So Kyle warned me of this, and he was like, yeah, so you just need to tell the police officer that you're staying with this family, and that he'll let you in. And I'm like, yeah, with what Japanese? So, I
So you took the train system there.
I took the train from the airport, actually to the currency exchange, and then to their house.
So you kind of knew the system or where to go, or he told you something.
I knew where to go. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Google Maps works in Japan. God
Right.
bless. So that was really nice, and I took the time to kind of map it out and figure out, okay, I need to get off at this station. It's this neighborhood. Like, I need to make sure that I knew at least a little bit of Japanese to let them know that I appreciated that I was staying with them, and all the other stuff. It was a pretty good amount of preparation. But anyway, I go up to the gate, and then I get to the guard, and he asks me something in Japanese. I'm like, shit. So I just told him the name of the family I was staying with.
Mhm.
And so then he's like, oh, okay. And he pointed at a ringer. So I buzzed in, and I heard the voice of some random man asking me who the hell I was. And I was like, oh, I am Kyle's friend. And he's like, oh, okay. And as soon as he heard that, he knew. So
Okay.
yeah, I went in, and
Did you
the
say
next
all
thing
this
you
in
know,
Japanese or?
no,
it's
this
just
is in English.
English.
I just said I'm
Kyle's-
hi, I'm Kyle's friend, straight up. And I was like, man, this is fun as hell. Like, this is like, it's kind of scary too, because I'm like,
You have
I'm
no clue
literally
where to
just
go.
going up to some random dude's
Mhm.
like door. I've no idea. I've never met him before. He's never met me before. This cop might beat my ass, because the cops standing at the gate always have like this fucking, I don't know, like a stick.
Like a beat stick.
Yeah, and I was like,
To
shit,
pound
man,
you.
if I say the wrong thing, he's gonna beat my ass, man. Like, I'm standing in front of some like government embassy, and I'm trying to just get to this house because I'm sleeping in their basement, and I was like, fuck, man, I do not want to get my ass beat when I'm in Tokyo. That's not cool. So, but the host family was like way too kind. Like they brought me in, they gave me a really nice air mattress. It was really comfortable. They like took me around the house, and they showed me everything I needed. They gave me a key to their house. Some random stranger, some 23-year-old kid that they've never seen or met before, they just gave him a key, and they're like, here you go. Like, I'm like, holy crap, they're just so nice.
Now, do you think this is because you're Kyle's friend, or
Absolutely.
would the Japanese culture kind of dictate this if you were a host, or a guest in a host family?
So earlier you asked me about host or homestay culture and stuff, and whether or not that was normal.
Yeah.
And I said that I was gonna preface my answer with that story.
Mm-hmm.
So my answer to that was, when I got that dinner that I mentioned that I got dinner with the family
Right.
shortly before I left home, or left to go back home, and I asked them, so why did you trust me? Why did you let some random kid into your house that you've never met before, give him your house key, give him your Wi-Fi, like all this other like random stuff. You just open your door and gave him everything, like pretty much everything. Um, they fed me, they gave me like directions, they gave me a lot of suggestions. They were just really nice. The first night that I went out to, Tanishi, the name of the man that
Okay.
the father of the household, he like took me to the train station. He was like, all right, yeah, this is the way to go. This is one of the train stations in the neighborhood, blah blah blah. He was really kind. And I'm like, why do you do this for
Mhm.
people? Why do you do this for kids? And he looked at me, he said, I don't know. He didn't have an answer for me. He's like, I don't know why I do this, but he does it. And I'm not the first to stay with him that he's never met before. It's usually like connected to some friend or family member
Mhm.
sort of thing. But yeah, like, when I got there was a girl there. Her name was Shion, and she was a art student at a local university, but she didn't live in Tokyo, so she was just staying at the Tanishi household because it was closer to school. And I was like, wait, you don't even like what? They gave her own bedroom and everything. I'm like, dang, that's like really nice. She was staying there for a year or two, and she's just there for school. She's
Mhm.
not even their daughter. Like she's not connected to family at all. I'm just like, that's really nice of them.
So this is. Do they do this frequently then? Like they
Yeah, I
host
mean,
a lot, or some?
there was another
Yeah.
dude that showed up, who was he was a friend of their daughters, and he was just staying at home with them. So I guess it's like a little less weird, but it's kind of like if you were out of town and I was like, oh, I just need somewhere to stay, and it just happened to be near your parents' house, and then you let me
Yeah.
stay at your parents' house or something. So I
Yeah.
guess it sounds a little less weird,
It's
but
still pretty
I don't want to
different.
say weird.
It's
Yeah, I don't want. I
different.
think
It's
weird
still
has a
very different.
yeah, it's uncommon, and
At least
weird
in
has a negative connotation to it, but
at
it's
least
like
compared to the American culture.
yeah. And I mean, I guess my parents might not necessarily be cool with it, but I know like maybe my buddy Brian, like if I really needed somewhere to stay, he would connect me with his brother, and I'd probably be able to stay with them or something. Like
Right.
I don't know, it would probably work out, but in Japan, or at least with this specific family, I don't want to generalize, but that specific family, it felt like they're just very welcoming, and I was really, really lucky to have had the opportunity to like stay with people who took such good care of me, who were so kind, who were offering me so much.
Geez, that sounds like a really, really good experience then to go with somebody like that or to have that experience because, um, I mean, homestay in general, is this common in Japan?
I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea, but I was just really lucky. I
Okay.
think it's not like I had a
That's
curfew either. They just gave me keys. And they're like, do whatever the fuck you want, man. And I'm like, all right, cool.
how big was this kind of home? Now, were you like in a separate kind of area or is it just like a regular house? Is it cut off in two different kind of buildings?
Um, it was a pretty. It was normal for Japanese standards, I guess. The floors were very small. The building was not as. So I think a really good way to think about the difference in American homes and Japanese homes, at least from the two I've experienced. I've experienced an Airbnb apartment that
Mhm.
I stayed at the first time I went to Tokyo, and then now this house.
Mhm.
So the houses or the living spaces are not as wide, but are taller. So at this house that I was at, there were like one, two, three, four, like 4 or 5 floors, but like one of them was a basement, and there's a ground level, and then there's like the above ground level, which is generally like how like most people's homes, like the first floor is above ground level.
Yeah.
So there is that, and then there's a second and third floor. So it's like
So,
5 total stories, but
oh,
a good amount of it was underground.
but they were
Um,
small rooms
the rooms were
or smaller than
they're like smaller.
because
Yeah,
it's like
like
this 5-story building now that you'd
yeah,
say.
it's not very wide, but like you go in there and you're like, wow, there's actually like a good amount of space in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, you were separated out a little bit between where the host family would stay or where the host family would
Yeah, what was nice is
generally.
that I was able to like go into the house late at night and not disturb anybody.
Right.
Maybe like Tanishi would be on the couch at like 11 to 12 p.m. watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
He stays up pretty late, so that was pretty common for him. And I would be able to come home from like shopping or an arcade or something, and I wouldn't be disturbing anybody. Mariko-san, who was the mother, she slept earlier, like 10 or 11. So at first I was worried, like, oh, I don't want to wake her up, or I don't want to wake up Shion if she has class or something. They're actually on break, but I didn't realize that till I got there.
Mm.
So it was like it was really nice being able to come in and out of the house without like, bothering them. But it just
Right.
worked out just because of like the way the
So it
house
just
is structured.
yeah, it made it so much easier. I guess that makes a lot more sense than if they. It's a little bit, at least in my opinion, it'd be a little bit more difficult if people were coming in and out of your home, even if you trust them or even if they're part of friends or family. It'd still be a little bit more difficult if it was all more in one area than so this being disturbed while sleeping
Yeah.
or being disturbed by while doing certain things. So okay. So that's a huge factor. Now, what other questions or anything specific that you ask the host family that you would impart any knowledge upon us as viewers, or anything specific that you asked the host family that, or something that you noticed while being there, other than the things that we already talked about?
At that dinner that I had with my host family right before I left home, I got to ask a lot of very specific but very loaded questions. I asked, and one of them that really stood out to me that I think is going to be really interesting to talk about, specifically with people our age, between Dan and I,
Mhm.
is anime culture versus Japanese culture. So I asked them, the first question I asked was, how do Japanese people perceive anime culture? Because I know American culture or society sees anime in a couple of different lights. You have some people that look at it as, that's really fucking weird. I don't know why you have these like nerds that like jack off in their basements and like
Mhm.
watch this all day and fantasize about these girls and whatever. This is just really weird. I don't know why they don't like go get a real girlfriend or something. And you have people who appreciate it. Maybe they'll watch a series or two and they're like, okay, this is cool.
Really?
Maybe they prefer American TV shows or dramas with human beings. Maybe they'll have maybe they might like it more than they're willing to say because of how people perceive anime culture in general and how it's kind of got, I don't want to say a negative stigma to it, but it's not seen the way
Mhm.
if you say that I just watched this really cool anime, it sounds different from when you say I just watched Breaking Bad or
Right.
I just watched Pretty Little Liars.
Right.
It comes off very differently, right? And then you have people that are a little more enthusiastic, that are a little more open about it, that are willing to dive a little deeper. And you have the extreme on the other side of
Straight
the
weebs.
viewpoints where people are just like very enthusiastic, very
Mhm.
outspoken about it. It's just people that are very passionate about that.
Right.
So I guess that's kind of like my perception on American society's view on anime culture. But I was curious about Japanese people, and when I asked Tanishi, he was like, I don't really know. He said that he thinks that his generation, he's 70 years old. He thinks that,
Oh.
yeah, but this man
Okay.
is I joked a lot with with my friends in Japan. Like,
Mhm.
we call him Japanese Jesus because like he's really smart. He knows a lot about random stuff. He was once a university professor. He is like really, really kind, really jolly. He's very considerate. And he's just like very well spoken. His English pronunciation of words isn't that good, but his vocabulary is huge. Like this
Right.
man is smart as hell. I'm just saying. So he's like, he thinks that his generation is the last generation to understand and appreciate anime culture, but he didn't really know how to explain how Japanese people see it, and it's very different. You'll sometimes see cute anime characters, both male and female characters, drawn to advertise like a restaurant, or maybe like a little shop will have like a little logo or character that kind of is their mascot. I know that there's this like cute little anime drawing on the trains, like on
Mhm.
the windows, plastered there as a little advertisement, and I guess it wasn't an ad, but it was just this girl saying, "Hey, it's probably really hot outside, but um, here's a little motivation to get through the day," and it's just her like cheering you on,
Oh, like a little
right?
graffiti art or some type of artistic thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's something that the train system put in. So it's like you definitely see that anime is a little more accepted in Japan, but when I asked people my age, like the students from the high school that we exchanged with, they're our age.
Right.
We just met them in high school. So when I asked them about how they saw anime culture and like when I talked to them about it, they had very similar reactions to my friends. Like there's this anime series that I'm a pretty big fan of that most people know is Love Live.
Mm-hmm.
It's a idol type anime where you have like 9 girls that sing and
Mm,
dance and shit. They have like
musical, musical.
yeah, yeah. So they're really popular and in the world, and I mean a lot of people know at least know of it or heard of it in Japan. But then some of these people had no idea what it like really was, and I knew way more about it than they did, obviously because I'm a fan. But when I talked to them about Love Live, they had similar reactions and scoffs that some of my friends here have. Like, oh man, yeah, I don't know why you like this garbage, but they don't actually think it's garbage. They're just trying to give me a hard time. But when I told them following that, when I was talking to Tanishi and Mariko-san, and there's one other friend there that I was talking to, um, about how Americans see anime, I mentioned that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, that my my um my perception of American society's views on Japanese culture heavily relates to anime culture, and that like there's a lot of association between the two. Because when I asked Tanishi what Japanese people saw anime like,
Mm-hmm.
he asked me how Americans see anime, and I was like, a lot of people associate anime with Japanese culture, like one for one. Um, do you think that's the case?
Um, Japanese. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's either yeah, everything. Because when I what I was trying to think about was like certain card games or certain anime, and they all stem from the anime series. So, I mean, from the very start, I think the one of the oldest ones would be something like Pokemon or something, where or not even Pokemon, like Sailor Moon. Um, that was a cartoon that was brought and put into the U.S. I bet there's something even earlier than that, definitely. But those are the big name shows or animes that like Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, and then Pokemon that are huge, huge. No matter who you would talk to, they'd probably know in the U.S. And that's basically stemmed from that is really yeah anime. So I'm trying to think of something else, or well, because everything stemmed from that, and because people keep thinking, at least in America, about anime, they started getting more interested in the Japanese culture a little bit more, and that's when it kind of starts stemming a little bit out. But yeah, everything I think
For the most part, we associate anime with Japanese
associate.
culture in the way we think about it.
Yep.
And when I told Tanishi this, he was very surprised. He's like, "Wow, that's very surprising because, um, like in my everyday life while I was in Tokyo, it wasn't like everyone there had not people. There are people there who don't like anime too. There are
Of
people there
course.
who would rather watch drama, would rather watch,
Hmm.
you know, um, something not anime. They have other hobbies like, they like reading or they like going out with their friends or something
Of
instead of like
course.
watching anime all the time. They have very different lives that they live, and I think it's really easy to just assume that like anime is something that a lot of people accept and a lot of people like. It's definitely very popular. The main anime district that is known in Tokyo, Akihabara, it used to be just an electric district. It's called Electric Town, but
Hmm.
it was only according to my friend, it was only like about 10 years ago or so when it kind of turned from an electric district to an electric and anime district, where you see a lot of games, you see a lot of arcades, you see a lot of figures and anime goods. Um, you can still go there to buy like computer parts, TVs, and other electronics,
Right.
but it's very different now. And I think that maybe I'm thinking a little too far into it, but part of me felt that based on the way Tanishi responded and the way the conversation was going, he was very surprised and almost a little. I don't want to say like he was upset about it, but because that's I don't think that's an accurate description. But it was like
There's so much more
to being Japanese,
right.
and that reminds me a lot of when we had our food episode when we talked about when you said that you felt that in America, at least your experience with Japanese food, that you didn't get a lot of a wide palette of flavors. You didn't get a lot of different types of meals. I had so many different types of meals in Tokyo that were really different and were really fucking good. But I don't necessarily blame you for having that opinion. I can't blame you at all because
there's not much exposure here in the US at least, or where we are.
Exactly. You either get bad sushi or mediocre ramen. Those are basically your options for Japanese food here. So it's like, all right. I mean, I can't blame Dan for saying that he doesn't think there are a lot of flavors, and I know you're not the only one that thinks that.
Yeah.
So it's just I think it's I also think that it's hard to blame Americans. Like you said, you made a really good point. Like, other than the whole like Japanese internment in America type bullshit during the World War II thing, right? Like when you think about Japanese culture, you don't really like Americans don't have a lot of exposure to what it is other than like Yu-Gi-Oh, anime, noodles. Like like what and sushi. Right? Like what else do you really think of as an American? And it's you can say that people are ignorant, but at the same time, it's really hard to blame them when that's just how it's portrayed. And that's how like they don't see things in their everyday life. So
and they don't
I just think that
go ahead. No. And they don't have the experience, and you can say that I think about any culture in general. That's not huge or not really largely in the US even. You can even say that about a European culture. Like if you go to Italy, you know, we don't know Italian culture in general. We just know Italian food and Italian like gangsters or mobs or whatever you think about, because those are portrayed in the movies and they're portrayed in and we have that actual food here. So I think it's mostly just what we see on TV, what we see in the movies, and what we have at our ready hand wherever we go.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really good point because I guess that would just leave us with the note that like, oh, if there's a culture that you're interested in or something that you're interested in, try to look a little deeper and try to consider what else there is instead of just taking what you know of it and then assuming, you know, putting together an image that may not necessarily be accurate. There is a level of ignorance that can be, you know, forgiven, but at the same time, it never hurts to like do a little bit of research and explore and learn a little bit about what's past that. Which brings me to another really interesting point. So something that a lot of people kind of think about Japan as a country is that everyone is extremely polite. So anyone that's ever been to Japan before, they'll probably tell you that they feel like everyone there is extremely courteous, they're very kind, they're very polite, that they feel like there's very high levels of respect between a lot of different people. I think there's a lot of truth to that, but that's coming from a non-Japanese speaker. And I'll get to why that's relevant in a bit. But whether or not you are Japanese, or at least, or let me rephrase that. Whether or not you are Japanese or you speak Japanese, anywhere you go in, you'll probably be welcomed. You'll be treated for the most part the same. People will bow. People will say very kind things. They'll thank you very in high regards. And it's a very pleasant experience because in America, in the service industry, people will sometimes just give you a bad attitude because they just hate their jobs or they're having a really bad day. I've even experienced servers in Japan in restaurants who treated me nicer than the ones in America where they actually get tipped, because America's the only country I think to tip. So it's it's really interesting to see those comparisons. But something that was brought up by friend of mine who I got dinner with, she, fuck, I'm pretty sure she lives in either Yokohama or Tokyo. Yokohama is a city south of Tokyo that you can think of as like Schaumburg to Chicago, but
Okay.
much more populated and much bigger. But you can think of it similarly.
Okay.
And that is, it's like a pretty big area
Right.
outside. So she said that she read a study that for people that understand Japanese language, that
Mhm.
when they're in Japan, they will know that people are not as kind as foreigners who don't speak Japanese perceive them to be. And I think that that was really interesting because like the entire time, my perception of Japanese culture and the way you interact with people was that they're very courteous, they're very kind, they'll treat you with a lot of respect, and they want you to feel as comfortable as possible.
Right.
And but she was saying that if you understand Japanese more so than not, you'll probably pick up more and more that they're not as courteous as you may think.
Now, are
Which,
they? Okay, could go. Sorry.
no, you can go ahead.
Is that portrayed towards foreigners in general, or towards the people there in Japan?
I think it's both, but more, I would say more so foreigners.
Okay.
And what's also interesting is that I'm kind of glad that she made that point because if we keep talking about how amazing the food is in Japan and how clean the city is and how efficient everything is run and how kind everyone is, it exoticizes them. You know, it puts them on this huge pedestal and says like they are heaven on earth, but they are not. And I mean, for me, I would say that they're pretty close because there's a lot there that I really enjoy that makes me happy. And I think that Tokyo as a city is great for vacations. However, I think it's a terrible place to live. I would hate to work there. I would hate to, at least right now, you know, I would hate to have a day-to-day job. I would hate to raise a family. I think there are a lot of things there that make it really hard to live there.
Like, give an example
I
of
speak Japanese.
something. Give like a concrete example of why you wouldn't want to live or work there or raise a family there specifically.
Because the average, I've heard people tell me that they spend as many as 10 to 14 hours at work every day, and I don't want that at all.
That depends on the kind of, I feel like the job or the position or the thing you're doing.
This is over
right?
different industries too.
Right.
I talked to somebody at a startup. I talked to somebody at a tech company. I talked to somebody working for government. I talked to a bunch of different people, and in general, work culture there is horrendous. I think raising a family might be hard there, or even like trying to start a family, because a lot of people do not want to have kids, let alone get married. So I actually should be the other way around. Don't want to get married, let alone have kids or whatever.
Right,
Anyway,
right.
but you get the point. So there are a lot of things that just make it so. There are a lot of things that are less glamorous than
Oh yeah.
we would imagine. We look past, but I think it's really nice that she made that point because it was kind of like, it kind of brought me back down to earth to see that there's no place that's perfect, and there are just gonna be places with like really good and really bad things. And,
Right.
And maybe if I continue to study Japanese or if I look more into the topic, I'll learn more about what she means and why people aren't
Yeah.
as kind or as considerate as I imagine them to be. But I thought it was a really interesting point because my buddy Kyle, who has been visiting Japan for a while and studying Japanese for like years, he didn't really notice that. But it's worth noting that we've had plenty of conversations between me and Kyle and a couple others about how he'll be treated and how I'll be treated, because we're both foreigners, we're both American, but I look Asian, I am Asian, but I don't speak Japanese. Kyle is a tall, handsome, skinny white dude.
And dad handsome, right?
Dude, he is.
Okay. Okay.
But he's a tall, handsome,
Hmm.
skinny white dude who speaks perfect Japanese.
Right.
So we are always going to be treated differently.
Of course.
People will, and we've kind of like noticed this in interactions too, where people will express like, "Oh God, he's one of them," to me when when they say something to me in Japanese because I look Asian, and then I respond in English. Or then when someone says something in like broken English to him and he responds in perfect Japanese,
Hmm.
they're very different and we're treated very different.
And
Um,
I feel like that's the same in pretty much any culture if you think about it.
which sucks because being
Of
Asian American,
course.
it's still so shitty sometimes because like in America, like I'll get asked where you're really from. I'm like, fuck you, I'm from Chicago. Like, what are you trying to say?
Yeah.
And then when I'm there, it's like, well, man, now you're looking at me all funny, like, oh, I'm not Japanese, which is fine, that's fair. But
Right.
like, come on, man, like, I
Right.
you're gonna treat this white dude like super nice, and you're gonna treat me like not so nice.
Right.
And it's not that bad because when you look past it and you accept it, that's because that's just how people
People in
uh
general are. Hmm.
not that that's how they are, but that's how they react to those situations sometimes. At least
Okay.
most of the people I've interacted with.
Okay.
Um you see passing it like, all right, they probably don't mean to be like a dick. It's cool. It's kind of like how people here when they ask you where you're really from, they're not trying to be a dick. They're curious, but it still comes off really
You get
badly.
asked that so often and or
Yeah,
so very frequently that it's just like, well,
yeah.
yeah.
But then when I got back to America, at immigration, I have a U.S. passport. The immigration guy welcomed me back, and I was like, "Yeah, that's right, man. You welcomed me back. That's nice. I am back. I am home. I am American, man. Shit. Ugh.
Yeah. But back on a little bit of the work culture, I've seen videos about that, and especially in like the service industry or the food industry, where obviously you hear people, even decent, very or decent restaurants, they wake up at 5 or 6 or something a.m. and they have to prep the food, they have to prep the location, they have to prep everything first. Then they obviously serve throughout the entire day and they don't get home until 10 or 11 p.m. because then they have to clean everything as well. And these restaurants don't have 5, 7, 8, 10 cleaners or janitors or people who help restore the restaurant to back to cleanliness. No, it's the owner, the cook, the chef, whatever it is, plus like 1 or 2 or 3 other people. And obviously, like that's smaller restaurants, but if it's bigger restaurant, they're still there cleaning themselves. I think. Did you see this, or did you ask somebody about that kind of direction, the food service industry? Um, Not just some small little hole in the wall as well, but some larger restaurants.
I didn't notice that specifically with restaurants.
Okay.
But I, man, I just like feel so bad for a lot of these like young adults living in Tokyo who are working full-time jobs. I have one
Hmm.
friend. She works for the government, and she and her coworkers average 14-hour days. And it's obviously not by choice, and it's obviously not because she wants to fucking be there. I asked her too. I'm like, "Do you have a boyfriend? Are you looking for a boyfriend? Because like, but you're not gonna have time to." She said yes. She wants to like have a guy, but she has no time to go meet people or like even consider pursuing that because she's working 14-hour days Monday through Friday, sometimes weekends, but then she'll generally have weekends off, and by then she has to like take care of her home, take care of herself. It's like, when the hell she's gonna have time to date? I had one friend who um he came to
Hmm.
dinner late because he was at work, and then after dinner he was gonna go back to work, and he did because he had a deadline to meet. I was like, holy shit, like, come on. I had one guy tell me that he had just started training at work, and they're not paying him a lot because he's training, but oh, no, he wasn't training, he had just started, but he was working full time, but he was still learning,
Hmm.
but he still worked like pretty long hours. He has a girlfriend, and she's in school,
Hmm.
but he doesn't get to see her a lot, not because she doesn't have time. College life in Tokyo and Japan in general is very lax.
Hmm.
But like his work schedule is just very restrictive, so he doesn't get to see her a lot. um yeah, I don't know, man. It's just, oh, my friend at the startup, he was telling me about how like he only gets to see his girlfriend like when he goes to bed, when he wakes up, and then like maybe on weekends if he's not busy with the startup. It's like I didn't I honestly can't recall anybody telling me that they had regular work hours and that like it was 9 to 5 and they got to go home and like eat or like play video games or like relax.
Yeah.
I really don't remember that. And they all knew it sucked. They all knew it was really bad and they knew it wasn't sustainable. When I asked Kyle about his future with Japan, because he does see himself living there at some
Right.
point for an unknown amount of time, he doesn't know how long he'll be there. He said that he dreads the work culture and he's hoping that he can work in an American company at Tokyo with an American work culture where he can go home at 5 or 6 p.m. and like live a life, right?
Right.
Where he doesn't have to be there for 10, 12 hours and that he would eventually just burn out and hate his life. Because that kind of contributes to why the population growth in Japan has been so shitty. I'm not sure if this is something that's commonly known, but it's estimated by I don't remember if it's 2040 or 2050 that Japan's population would be cut in half because people are just not having kids and their economy will crash.
Because they don't have the time to even
exactly
do anything. Yep.
Exactly.
Okay.
So then there are like pushes. Like my friend that worked at a startup, he also writes for fun for Wired, and he writes about Japanese work culture, and he wants to like start these conversations about whether or not people will ever have an opportunity to talk to their employers about, hey, why don't we like try getting off a little earlier? Why don't we try just enforcing regular work hours, or like for companies in general to enforce policies where people can have time to live their lives? It may not necessarily be good for the company when you're cutting labor and you don't have as much of a chance to accomplish what you could accomplish in a given amount of time because you're cutting your hours from like 12-hour days to 8-hour days.
Right.
But it would be really good for the people, since you're like, if you think about like even if it's like 2 hours a day, if you go from like 12 hours to 10-hour work days, 10-hour work days still suck, but like that's 10 hours during the work week that you get back for yourself. You could do a lot with 10 hours, right?
Right. And it definitely, but that kind of work or work life has brought Japan to kind of where it is as well, where everyone outside of Japan, or at least Americans, think how efficiently everything is run, how clean everything is, how this and this. And I feel like that is one of the factors, or one that brought upon just Japan itself. It's because of that work culture, because of how long they have to work in order to achieve something. So, I mean, or not to achieve something, to get to this place they are right now. Do you not attribute some of that to this Japanese culture, style, life?
I think there is truth to that, because you'll see a lot of really efficient ways of doing things in Tokyo that you don't see in other cities. And there are a lot of opportunities for people to live really cool lives, in Tokyo, because of the hard work that their fellow countrymen have put into it. But
right.
and a lot of people that I've talked to will have agreed with this statement that living in Tokyo and going there to enjoy yourself, to go on vacation, just like if you're gonna be there to enjoy yourself, it is an amazing place to be. It's just a shitty place to work. Like if you want to enjoy your life and you want to like go do stuff for fun, there's so much to do in Tokyo and in Japan in general that it's gonna be hard to find something to be bored and to not have anything to do.
Right.
But then, living a life there and working there is terrifying and is very exhausting. And it's like, I think that you're right that there probably is some kind of it's worth noting that the work that these people in Japan are putting in have to contribute to some kind of progress that they're making as a society. Whether or not that's worth it, I
Well,
personally don't think so. I don't know, and I also don't know how much this extra work
right.
is contributing, because I don't know if you can be fully functional and efficient for 14 hours. But this poor girl I know she is at work for
Hmm.
14 hours, right? Like, what could she be doing in that time? I don't know. It's government work, so maybe it's different. But there's a lot of questions that I can't answer because I just don't
Right.
have that knowledge yet. But I think that
Hmm.
it seems like whether or not there is a direct correlation and positive impact from the extra work that people are put in, I don't know if it's worth sacrificing the future of the country, the personal lives of these young adults,
Right.
and any opportunities that they're missing out on.
Of course. And then, do you think, because there is this hierarchy kind of thing where you have to respect the old a little bit or elderly, and I think that's an Asian culture in general, but you have to respect the elderly, you have to not talk back in specific ways or certain ways. Do you attribute some of that, or do you think um, that is the reason why nobody has stood up or done something about this work life, is because there are older people in certain positions of power, or older people where you have to respect their decision or the way they handle things, and you just have to kind of go with it. Is
I don't
that
know.
where the obediency? Well, what do you think? Your opinion?
Um, yeah, I don't know. I think that'd be easier if I had a chance to work in Tokyo for a little bit, so I could answer
Hmm.
that. Uh, and who knows, that might happen one day.
Okay.
It's something I've definitely thought of, but I haven't put a lot of thought into it, so I don't know.
Okay.
But if I had to guess, I think that it's more of a societal type of behavior than one of respecting your elders. I think
Okay.
that it's, I think there's more to attribute to everyone else is doing it. So if I'm not, I'm lazy. That mentality than anything else. And I think that when you have a lot of different companies that exhibit that type of work culture, then you put people in a position where, oh, at my company, I'm only working 9 hours. Maybe I'm not working enough. And then maybe your peers also feel the same way. So then they're all going to stay late. Um,
Hmm.
but
That makes
I
sense.
don't know. I think that that's a really good question though, because
For
um,
people, for our viewers out there, if you're curious, that's something probably to take a look at.
yeah, no, I agree. I agree. That's definitely something that is worth exploring. And I
Hmm.
think that finding reasons as to why these work hours are so long, why people don't get to live their personal lives, or like, or what it is. I think there's also something that's worth noting, where, like, okay, if you're spending your week, like, let's just say 10 hours, right? You're
Hmm.
putting in 50 hours a week. You don't get paid overtime, by the way, because that's a US thing. I don't know if every company in Japan is like that, but I know that some companies don't pay you for the extra time that you stay. Some companies uh, don't pay you overtime. It's very different, but most of the
Right?
time, in general, you don't get compensated, I
Of
guess is
course.
what I'm
Hmm.
saying. So then you're putting in all this time and effort at work. You're gonna come out of work, you get exhausted, you have your weekend. It's really easy to just check out and to like want to do your own thing and enjoy yourself, rather than like put the energy into like, oh man, now I gotta build relationships with people. Now I gotta like meet someone. If I really want
Hmm.
a boyfriend, I gotta like go like be nice and like be a human. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's so many opportunities for people to just
It's
do
just
their own
hard.
thing and to enjoy themselves and like find their own ways to relax. That it's like it's even less of an incentive to build a personal life or a career or something if like, you know,
Yeah.
you don't have time to enjoy or breathe.
Right. And then
So
one other big thing that I have at least seen in videos is culturally wise or generationally wise as well. This is in a video I saw. The older generation versus the younger generation has so many differences. Obviously, base level culture wise, is somewhat the same, but um, the way people handle situations. Did you notice any difference between obviously the person you were staying with They were the part of kind of the elder generation versus the young culture and the young 20-year-olds generation. Was there a huge disconnect between them specifically, the way they handled life, you think, or is it pretty much kind of the same from your observation?
Are you asking how people
Just
like dealt with problems in their lives, or what do you mean?
everything related to just generationally wise, because I've heard there's a big generation gap or a big difference between the way they live life in general, young versus older, and not just like, oh, what do you want to do out, let's go party or something, um, but I don't know how to even describe it, just the
I think
way
I
they
see what you're saying. You're asking if I notice any difference between uh the older generation's daily lives and the younger generation.
somewhat, yeah, at least
Uh,
did you notice anything, yeah, observation.
Personally, I didn't because the homestay I was at included two retired adults,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of my friends in Tokyo were young, just started their career working adults. I also didn't get a chance to talk to a lot of old people there. So I think it would have been really nice, to ask those questions. A lot of the questions that I asked the Tani family was specific to Japanese society, not necessarily how they live their lives. Um, so I don't have an answer for that,
Okay.
but yeah.
Well, it's out of a curiosity because I've seen that video or of somebody trying to interview an older generation and they just noticed some differences. So, um, but any highlights that you want to
Oh
share?
man, there's so many cool things that I did while I was there. I know that we talked a lot about um, some more controversial stuff, and
Right?
I think that they're pretty interesting topics to start discussions or to spark some thoughts in our viewers' minds. So
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty dope. Um,
One big highlight for you.
One big highlight.
Just one. Just leave it off on one big, huge highlight.
Hmm, man.
If you were to say, you know what, you're going to Japan, this is something you definitely need to do.
Oh,
100%. No, if this is the only thing you do, you are on a layover, you're there for 6 hours, 8 hours, whatever it is. You got one thing.
uh, well, this will be specific to me
Okay.
because it's something that I really enjoy.
Hmm.
Um, so there's a rhythm game at an arcade at Sega arcades called
Yeah.
Chunithum. I think that's how it's pronounced. I've always pronounced it that way. I don't know how else to pronounce it, but it's a very unique and extremely popular rhythm game in Tokyo right now. When I went last year, the game was pretty new.
Hmm.
Um, it had just launched. I went in March of 2016, and I think the game came out in like the end of 2015. And I remember like at most arcades had like 4 or 6 of these machines at most. They'd have 8. Um, but now every arcade that I've been to has at least 8 of these machines. I've seen as many as 12. Um, this game is absolutely insanely popular. It's a rhythm game where you have a touchpad at the bottom here of the machine,
Hmm.
and you play it like you're playing a piano almost. You're touching spaces where guitar hero styled notes are
Oh.
coming down, and so sometimes you have to like touch a lot, or sometimes you have to like hold, or sometimes you have to tap, or like swipe. Sometimes you
Hmm.
have to like slide back and forth.
I
There'll be
think
other times when like there are sensors on the left and right side of the machine where you have to like lift your hand up and make hand movements and stuff, or like go across. It's so much fucking fun.
have you
I
seen
think
that at round one?
no, it's not at round one. It's not in America.
Okay.
Um, this game is my favorite rhythm game of all time. It's something that I guess it's really interesting because I grew up playing the piano, but I hated it.
Hmm.
And what drew me to this game was the fact that it felt like you were playing a piano, but at the same time, it was. I've never felt so like when I play rhythm games, most of the time I usually feel really tense, and I feel like, oh man, I can't fuck up, I can't mess up my combo and stuff like that. And this game is like you're relaxing, you're moving your arms around. It's like, I don't know, man. It's a very magical experience for me. I really enjoy it. I like there are some days where I spend like as much as 2 or 2.5 hours just like playing at an arcade before. Like I would literally play until I was fatigued and I was like I couldn't like read the notes. Like it was really, I loved it. And this isn't something that everyone will really necessarily enjoy because not everyone's good at rhythm games. Not everyone likes to play rhythm games. Not everyone likes to go to arcade at all.
Right.
So for everyone else, I would say that just like walking around in the residential neighborhoods, there's this. It's just very relaxing. It's very calming. It's almost therapeutic. You'll see like all sorts of people walking around. You'll see people like old people like just going for walks. You'll see like young people going to work on their phones. You'll see like little kids coming home from school, which is like the fucking most adorable thing. So even if it's just like somewhere that you've never seen or heard of before, and you just walk around, you're gonna see a lot of really cool stuff. You might find like a really good hole in the wall like soba or ramen restaurant that's really dope. But I think anyone that enjoys like arcade games at all, I would definitely check out this rhythm game. It was just so much fun, and they have a lot of really popular songs on there too. So yeah, I'll link a video in the description of of the game, someone playing the game. I'll make sure that it's a song that
People would know.
that people know, and also that I have completed at a high level. Because I'm just gonna say that like I played a lot, I got good like pretty quickly, but I'm nowhere near as good as like holy shit. Some of the people that are playing these games is like fucking insane. They were like really. This game is so intense that like people will wear gloves because they're like sliding around this much and they need to make sure that their hands aren't like sweating and sticking to it. Like I wore gloves too, and I like bought a card to like save my account and stuff.
Nice.
But like there's gonna be those random times where like some like really shy looking dude or chick will come in, you know, they wear one of those face masks because they're sick and they don't want to get everyone else sick, and they were like in their school uniform, and then they go insane. They get like the highest comments. I'm like, this is like it's so cool. Gaming culture in Japan is something that we could talk about on its own in a different episode, but I mean, I don't think I'm that good at the game, but I kind of want to highlight my best performance because I just want to. I guess it would be demonstrative of how much time I really spent playing this game. And I didn't get to play every day, but whenever I did get to play, I would play like for an hour or two.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I really should have recorded myself playing. I think that would have been really fun. I'll do it next time. But
Next time, whenever you're there.
I'm aiming to go sometime in 2018.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
but yeah, maybe in the future we could do another episode about like talking about some of the highlight things, or like if you're going to Japan, what you should do, and like what I did and where I fucked up and what you should keep in mind and stuff like that. But I think we have reached a point where we can wrap it up for the day. What do you think, Dan?
Definitely. That was what I was gonna end up on. You know, highlight of the trip, and then boom.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for experiencing a little bit of kind of a deeper conversation about Japanese culture in general. I didn't even know it would kind of get directed towards this much.
Yeah, and obviously we're not
substance.
experts like at all. We're just talking about our opinions and based on my observations, right? So I could be totally wrong about something, and I don't want that to be representative of like what Japanese culture actually entails, or you know what certain things should be interpreted as.
Right.
So if there's anything you notice that was like way off, or I just said something like Johnny, you're so wrong, just post it in the comments and let me know why.
Let us know, because obviously, you know, this may spark some more conversation about Japanese culture in general, or provide more interest for people to go to Japan, to experience it, to find out about this culture. We hope it did. Leave a comment.
If you love this episode, subscribe. That'd be dope. But thanks a lot for watching. And we'll be up again next week.
See you on the next one. Peace.